I wasn't going to do a video on Tim Ward this early. I call him the icon of nomadism. Originally, I had planned to make this video since June on all of my planned videos I was going to make, because I think that the thing that Tim has done, his no-nonsense way of saying don't conform to anybody's societal standards simply because it's all a game anyway. If not all of it, most of it is a game, not conspiracy theory, okay? But before I go deep into Tim Ward, I want you guys to go and read a book that I'm going to put down in the description called Be a Free-Range Human by Marianne Cantwell that I bought a couple of years ago. Because the life that Tim Ward currently lives, she's been for years, she's British, I believe, if I can remember correctly. And I still kept this book all that time because it's a wonderful reference. Marianne Cantwell would talk about what's called the Beige Army, and that was her way of saying do not conform to your workspace. Okay, so I advise you guys to go read this because it may mirror a lot of what Tim Ward is saying now. He just takes a more crass, no nonsense, don't let yourself be miserable when you don't have to be. Okay, so by the time y'all watch this, you'll probably have found, if you know who Timothy Ward is, you will have found his YouTube channel why he talks about why black people don't travel. I originally wanted to touch on Tim as being an icon for all Americans in general, regardless of your race or whatever, because I think he's brought about some wonderful conversations that we all need to have about why you stay stagnant in jobs you don't like. Doesn't matter how I work, where I like where I am now with my 9 to 5. But the reality is that the 9 to 5 can be stifling for some people. Okay? I'm not even saying I'm going to stay in it forever. And if anything, I bought Be a Free-Range Human at the time because what Timothy Ward is doing is what I had planned to do. Okay? So I was going to make this an all-encompassing video. And I'm not saying if you're not black, you cannot watch it. So don't take it that way. Okay? So I watched his video recently about why black people don't travel. Here's my theory, and I hope he doesn't take offense, because based on me going to listen to his video, which I think is between 13 to 16 minutes, I don't remember, but it's informative. Here are the 3 reasons myself as a black American, based on how I was raised, why I think as a collective we do not travel as often. The 3 reasons, and then I'm going to break all 3 down. The first one is perceived losses. The second one is internal conditioning. And the third one is hearsay. Now, I'm going to break those 3 down. I know some people aren't going to agree. Please leave in the comment sections. You can add more, take some away, but I really want some opinion on this. The first one is perceived losses. Now, I will say this in the defense of black people, okay? With this recession coming up, I don't blame people for saying, hey, because our skin color has typically hindered us, we don't want to be traveling, because if we take a loss, we're going to take a bigger loss than our white or Asian counterparts or whatever other races. Now, there is some paranoia associated with that. Okay? But at the same time, people's reality are our I don't want to say ancestors, are our people going back to the civil rights and back. When you traveled, you knew as a black person you were going to take perceived losses. Right now, that loss is not recession proof given gas prices and things. So if you're nomadic and trying to move and you didn't do it before, maybe perhaps COVID-19, or perhaps you didn't do it before these gas prices went astronomical, because it doesn't really matter who's in power. I don't like talking politics really, so we're going to leave that alone. I think and suspect that black people feel that they're going to take a bigger loss taking that risk. And rightfully so. Because if you've lived in poverty, it takes a lot for you to recondition yourself. And I'll touch that in a minute, in the internal conditioning, that you can go and broaden your horizons in travel. Because like Timothy mentioned, I have a passport. I'm on my second one and I have to renew it in 2024. Because of the jobs I've had to have them. I traveled with the Navy several places, and Malaysia was my favorite country when I went, which rarely Navy ships go there, but we're not going to go there right now. Point is, I have traveled some places, both in the United States and overseas in my 20s. So that's what I think, is that people don't want to take those risks. And right now in a recession, if there's ever a recession, because disproportionately black Americans think it may hit them hard, they're not going to take that risk. Number 2, internal conditioning, aka the crabs in a bucket mentality. This is what I think happens with black Americans. The civil rights movement plays a role in this more than anything. And I'm not saying that the civil rights movement brought about paranoia. I'll let you do your own research and figure that out. The thing with the crabs in a barrel or crabs in a bucket, however you want to say it, okay, is that black people's metaphors have gotten them into trouble. Now, you'll see later on that I'm going to do a positive thing on Martin Luther King's speech, "Keep moving from this mountain." The bad news with us as a people is that we think we all have to climb the mountain top together. That's hint the crabs in a bucket. Because you have that internal conditioning, that because you come from this group, everybody's out to get you. It is all or nothing. So if you want to travel, but like say your siblings or your favorite cousin or your parents don't, or whatever household you grew up in growing up as a black American, you feel stuck because of the internal conditioning that branching out, and then Timothy brought this up too, means that you can be a target for the authorities. That's just not true. Myself being black American, I had two bad run-ins with police officers my entire life, and they were both here in Washington State where I am. One who pulled me over because I accidentally didn't put on my lights, and when I tried to be polite, he got snappy and I got quiet because I was not going to give him a reason in Bremerton to provoke me. That's one. The second one was when I lived, because there's a small incorporated town called Silverdale, and I was out walking with my head covered and in workout gear with my bottle, and one trailed me for like 15 minutes. I'm like, if you pull me over, you're gonna know that I live down the street and I deserve to be in this neighborhood. I was literally the only black person walking, but can I prove nor disprove me being black is the reason he went after me? No. But because I'm the only one of that skin color that was out there at that particular time of day, you can deduce that that may have been the reason. But I didn't panic, because my thing is, if you want to treat me a certain way, come prove that thing. Now, no, I am not a defund the police and all that, so don't bring that crap to my channel either. Don't get me wrong. There's good and bad and all of that. So what I'm saying is that internal conditioning kicked in with me for a second, that it's scary for me as a woman to go out, as a black woman to go out in broad daylight, because I could be followed. But to be fair, by that time I'd completed an active duty 8-year naval career and have traveled, so I've learned enough about the world to know that that can be very nuanced. That internal conditioning is built around the whole crabs in a bucket, and that hurts us more than anything. Now, the final one, and the thing that I suspect And Timothy brought this one up, so that's why I tell y'all to go watch his video, because he goes into it more than I will. Is hearsay. Anytime you meet a black person in this country, what you call foundational black Americans, in other words, they are the ones who are descendants of slaves. That's what that means. That's a new thing I'm hearing. It's called foundational black Americans. You're gonna know, because their conversation will say, that ain't what my grandma told me. Well, my mama said. You will have a preconceived notion of something based on hearsay from either your family or your peer group, because something either triggered them or hurt them in the past. That hearsay is really based on the civil rights movement and back in your family putting their pain on you. Now let me explain, because Tim brought this up and I was going to bring it up too, but then he said it in the end of his video. The Green Book back then was a book that was compiled for African Americans, telling you throughout the United States what hotels, restaurants, clubs, etc. that you could as a black person attend back when there was a lot of whites only, even when it was implied that segregation exists, like de facto in the North. You knew where you could and couldn't go. And that Green Book would tell you where you could go and be safe as a black person. A lot of you that are alive right now, that was the reality of your grandmothers. That is the reason that you listen to, well, I heard we can't go here. Your grandmother may be telling you something based on an experience 40 something years ago that does not pertain to the present. There's one controversial one I'll give you, for example, that I'm not going to go into, because I think there's truth to this. If you guys have ever heard of a place called Lake Lanier, there was a black town that was buried and that most of the descendants left, and now lots of people drown in that lake. Now, I wouldn't go pushing those buttons, so I understand that. But your hearsay that you're getting from those generations comes from the pain that they experienced. That your last bastion of the traditional and your baby boomers experienced. Because some of that started to fizzle out with Generation X. And that's another thing you have to do. You must study the last few generations to get the progression of why things have changed. Because you're stifling yourself based on your family's hearsay, and they can play on your emotions by doing this thing where they're like, I'm telling you, they don't like black people over there, la, la, la. I'll give you an example. I can remember when I'd gotten out of boot camp, and we go to the Navy, what's called your A schools. And there was this day where they gave us all of our orders in our A school, because your A school is where if you don't go straight to the fleet, you've chosen a specialty, and that's going to be your job unless you do what's called a cross rate. I'm not going to go into all that, but here's the antithesis of it. There always comes that day when everyone's given a packet of their orders of where they're going to go. They lay the packet in front of me of my first ever command, and it says Fallon, Nevada. And I remember looking up at my chief like, that's an E7 in the Navy. Chief, pointing, going, there are no ships in Nevada. That is a landlocked state. Are you telling me I'm going to a shore command first? What I didn't say, because at the time the Navy was, you just didn't say that, and you probably still don't, like, there ain't no black folk in Nevada. You sending me to a little bitty town in Nevada? Black folk, if they are there, they're probably in Reno and Vegas. I was not happy about it. I didn't dislike Fallon the way a lot of other people did, and I was pleasantly surprised. Because common sense would tell me, number one, if the Navy sends you, by default, black sailors are going. So, and it's not as if they said, okay, we can't not send you because you're black. That's just not how that works. They have to fill certain billets. But back in the back of my mind, I'm like, why he doing this? Don't he not know I'm black? We don't go to Nevada. What is that? Because of my hearsay, going back to our history and manifest destiny. And manifest destiny, racism followed, because if you study United States history, no one, and I repeat, no one, really wanted a lot of black people to move west, because what we knew as the West back then, they wanted that to be new free land for homesteaders that were not black. Because if I'm not mistaken, didn't the slaves get free at the same time? But that's the point. That's the third and final one. All right. So the thing with Timothy is that you can go live his lifestyle, if not just listening to his videos, but getting the references and the resources. I advise you guys to go and watch his channel, because he breaks it down how you can get those different types of jobs. He's even had like those chats, super chat squad. But look, seriously, go read this book by Marianne Cantwell, because you may already have skills you don't realize can translate into money. Well, all right, please feel free to leave a comment discussing why you think this crabs in a barrel exists. All right, thank you all so much for listening. Talk to you next time.